Hello and welcome to our presentation. Today we'll be talking about topic 5, the birth, growth and decline of MNEs. In this case, we'll be talking about Nokia. My teammates are Elsie, Adrian, Adam and myself, Tafara. I'll now be passing on to my next teammate to present the introduction of our PowerPoint.
Thank you, Tafara. Now I will brief a little about Nokia and discuss the problem that they have issues with. Nokia was founded by Fredrik Eistem on May 12, 1865 in Tampere, Finland. Nokia was the largest phone manufacturer, and by 1998 Nokia overtook Motorola and became the world's largest phone brand. Kenji mentions that at its pinnacle in 2007, Nokia had 51% of global market share in mobile phones. To put that into context, Apple now has roughly 25% of global market shares. This shows that Nokia were one of the highest global market share in 2007 comparing to now, where the best mobile phone brand currently, Apple, is only at 25% global market share. Moving on to the problems occurred. Nokia used Symbian as their operating system, and which Symbian was a device-based, whereas iOS and Android was more to app-based. Nokia partnered up with Microsoft in 2011 to become their main operating system, which operate Windows just like in computer, but now it is in the phone. They were reluctant to switch their main operating system and follow other brands on using Android or iOS, which has caused them to surrender their market leading position in 2013. That is all from me. I will pass back to Tafara and he will go in depth in the literature review of Nokia's birth, growth and decline in the next slide. Thank you.
In this part of the presentation, we'll be talking about where Nokia started up until the present day. Nokia was started in 1865 by a man named Fredrik Eidestam. He was a mining engineer. He specialized in mining. He set up a wood mill in the southwest part of Finland. He later then named his business Nokia because it was based near the river Nokiaverta, where he then opened his second wood milling business. Later on, he then partnered up with Edouard Polon, who owned a rubber works business. They then made rubber products and wood products or paper-based products together, and later on in 1912 created a division of the business where they had cable works so they could create electronics. Later on in 1979, Nokia created the first ever telecoms network in Finland and was named Mobira. This then translated into 1981, where Nordica Mobile telephone service was then officially launched, and this time they had international cell network service. So it meant anybody who had access to a cell phone was able to make phone calls, or anyone who had access to a telephone could make phone calls internationally. In 1982, they then launched their first phone, which was the Mobira Senator, which then paved way as well for the Mobira Talkman. These two phones were both very heavy, they were very cumbersome. The Talkman was a somewhat portable version, but it was nowhere near as being a hand phone. In 1987, they then created the first handheld phone, and this one was the Mobira Cityman. It was still very heavy for a hand phone, but it was portable this time. You didn't need wires to move around with. Everything was all in a somewhat smaller package. Moving on to 1991 to 1992, Minister Hole K makes the first phone call, and this was on the Nokia 1011, which launched with GSM. This was the first GSM phone in the world. Later on, they then introduced the Nokia 2100, the first phone that came with ringtones. Imagine, the first phone to come with ringtones. They had initially planned to sell 400,000 units, but to the amazement They sold over 20 million units. 20 million units. That's amazing. In 1988, Nokia by this time was now a mobile phone giant. They had the largest market share at the time. Their phones were very popular, and they were also selling them in different colors as well at the time. By 1996 to 2001, Nokia had made a turnover from 6.5 billion to over 30 billion euros. At the same time, when they made this astonishing achievement, they had launched the Nokia 7110, the first phone to come with wireless application protocol, or WAP or WAP. You could send emails on this phone and also browse the internet. Moving on to 2002, they launched the first ever camera video phone, which was the Nokia 3650. This phone came with 3G, meaning that you could go on the internet much faster. You could connect to the internet much quicker than before. You could send emails, you could browse the web, you could do almost anything you wanted to do at the time from your mobile phone. Moving on to 2007, Nokia was then forced, unfortunately, to recall over 46 million units due to battery faults that were reported. And by this time, Apple had introduced their first ever cell phone, which is the iPhone. Moving on to 2009, Nokia was forced to cut 1,700 jobs due to the recession that was happening in the country. At the same time, whilst this was happening to Nokia, the iPhone was catching up with them. In 2010, Apple and Google phones were now taking over the market. They were much more simpler. They had more features by this time, and Nokia's phones were now falling behind. Nokia had refused to move over to using Android, which they were offered by Google, and reluctantly moved on to using Microsoft operating system. Unfortunately, this then led to the decline of Nokia away from 2011 to 2014. Nokia had now lost their reputation. They cut a lot of jobs. This was because Apple's iPhones and Google's Android smartphones were now taking over the markets. They had more features. They were able to do things a little bit simpler, but much better than what Nokia had. While Microsoft's operating system on Nokia's phones was slow, it was unresponsive, it was very complicated to navigate, which then pushed away consumers. Today, Nokia is trying to bring back their brand by working with Google. They finally started working with Google and are slowly trying to build their brand back. The growth stages of Nokia are shown by the signs where Nokia decided to create the radio and telecoms communication, the first ever in the world and in Finland. They did this through the electronics they were making when they had a cableworks business. This allowed them to create the radio and telecoms network they needed because they had the tools, they had the machinery, they had the equipment to do so. Along the way, they then made their first telephone, which we mentioned earlier was the Mobile Senator, and down the road they made the Mobile Talkman, as well as the first GSM phone, which is the Nokia 1011. That was the first GSM phone. This meant that they could make calls to anybody around the world at any time, as long as the other person had, of course, access to a mobile phone themselves. The growth was further displayed with their innovation when they made the first camera phone, which is the Nokia 7650, and also when they included ringtones and various colors on their phones. This then allowed them to reach their revenue of over 30 billion euros at the time. This was between the time of 1999 to around 2002. Nokia's expansion across the world was also a sign that they were growing as a company. They became one of the world's largest mobile and telecoms company. They had the largest market share. They were able to sell their phones in multiple countries. They had phones that catered to almost everybody's needs and wants. So now we'll talk about the indicators and or factors that caused the decline of Nokia. Nokia had begun to have their downfall around 2009 through to 2014. During this time, Nokia transitioned into using Microsoft Windows operating system for the mobile platform. Unfortunately, by doing so, Apple's iOS and Google's Android operating systems had started becoming popular with a lot of customers, a lot of users. Why? Because these now offered a lot more features, especially as we're transitioning into the era of smartphones. We had 3G and we had 4G. Google's Android software on Samsung phones, HTC, Huawei at the time, and Apple's iPhones have become far more refined. They had better app support, better development support for those applications, whereas Microsoft Windows Mobile it didn't have much, which then caused people to gravitate towards more than the competition. Nokia had failed to realize and also to notice the trends in the market. They were offered at one point by Google to use the operating system on their phones. Unfortunately, Nokia declined and continued to work with Microsoft's Windows Mobile division. Unfortunately, as time went on, they had to stop using Microsoft Windows Mobile because they no longer could support it due to not being many developers that wanted to work with the operating system because it was complicated. It needed too many updates to continue supporting, of which still was not able to hold it to the same level as Android and Apple iOS, which then continued to further lead Nokia into decline. However, today Nokia is now working with Google and using Google's Android operating system. Unfortunately, the brand that we used to know all the way back from the early 2000s, where they had the ringtones, the first camera phone, the colors on their phones, the Nokia 3310, all that is currently diminished because Nokia, as I said, had failed to follow through with the changing trends in the market and keeping up with their competition. And this is a short slide showing where Nokia started from when they had the wood mill. They were making paper. Believe it or not, Nokia actually had paper. It was even called Nokia Silk. As you can see, they even had at one point Nokia computers, or they called it Nokia Data at the time. Then we have the Mobira phones. They were very heavy, as you can see, very cumbersome to use. These had about 10 hours of standby time, but you could only use it for an hour of talk time at any point. And then finally, the Nokia 1001 GSM phone, the first ever GSM phone. This one had an LCD display. It had an address book where you can have up to over 800 contacts, and you could receive and send text messages with it.
Hello, my name is Elsie, and I will continue presenting my part. Nokia has positioned itself as one of the world's most successful mobile phone corporations with an almost monopolistic market dominance in mobile phones. Nokia's success because of the leadership that is united and dynamic with imaginative management. Nokia's early success was attributed to a strong and united leadership team as well as visionary management, who made bold decisions that resulted in groundbreaking technology, digitalization, and the regulation of telecom networks across Europe and the rest of the world. Other than that competitive advantage, Nokia has developed its competitive edge through its renowned products, services, and innovations. The company competitive advantage based on strategic competency is more than just positioning. The error was caused by a variety of factors. Here are Nokia failed to adapt. Despite the fact that Nokia adhered to their error, it was too late. Users had already tried to increase agility. Many stakeholders were dissatisfied, and seeing the people that had assisted Nokia in becoming the top organization were no longer present. This is one of the reasons why internal working has an impact on the organization. Next, had internal issues. Many sections of the company were not adhering to one another. This lack of cooperation exacerbated existing problems, such as internal disputes among top management. The impact of this issue was indirect, yet nevertheless played a role in Nokia's demise. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Adrian. Today, I will going to discuss about the development, background, issues, and global strategies of Nokia. The first part that I will going to discuss is the development of Nokia. In 2003, Nokia had introduced the first camera phone. In 2011, Nokia had entered a strategic partnership with Microsoft to address the increasing competition from iOS and Android operating system. In 2014, Nokia had sold Mobile and Devices division to Microsoft. The next part that I'm going to discuss is background of Nokia. From its humble beginning in 1865, Nokia began its paper mill operation. Not only that, Nokia also involved in a range of industrial sectors such as cable, paper products, rubber books, tires, televisions, and mobile phones. Now, I will going to discuss about the issues and the global strategies of Nokia. Nokia transition to a primary focus on telecommunication began in 1990s. The first global system mobile call was made in 1991 using Nokia equipment. The rapid success in mobile phone sector allowed Nokia to become the best-selling mobile phone brand in the world by 1998. Now is global strategies. Nokia have focused their strategies on four strategic commitments which are: they are a trust partner for critical networks. They focus on technology leadership in each of their business. They capture the value shift to cloud and new business models. They create value with long-term research and intellectual property. Thank you.